Hi everyone, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome back to my garden. As you can see, not a whole lot is going on, but we're just a week into March, and so that's just as it should be. But we've got a very cold, blustery day, as you can see. And so I'm so glad that today's topic is an indoor one, and that is starting your plants from seed. And speaking of seeds, do you remember how I did a video recently on winter sowing? Well, a bunch of the seeds have germinated. Let's take a look at them. Can you see these teeny tiny little poppy seedlings? Now these ones, when it's time to transplant them, I'm going to have to be very gentle with them because they don't like to have their roots disturbed. But I just have to remember that when the time comes. These ones are talon onion seedlings, and you can see there are quite a lot, but they will be okay to tease apart and plant in the garden. But I'm very excited to see that things are coming to life. Now let's get out of this cold wind and go indoors. For my March 8th garden column, I wrote about seed starting basics, and you'll be able to find it on my blog starting on that date. But today I wanted to give you a bit more information about starting your own plants from seed. There are two important things you need to remember when it comes to containers. They must be clean and they must have drainage holes because drainage is really important. To clean your containers, you can make a simple solution that is 1 part bleach to 9 parts water, and that will work really great. And I use a little scrub brush just to clean them up even better. There are all sorts of containers you can use for seed starting. If you go to a garden center, you'll typically see something like this. This is called a seedling flat. There are no drainage holes in the bottom. And then what you do is you pair it with an insert that you can buy. They're pretty inexpensive and they come in all different sizes, but they do have drainage holes. This one is more of a tubular sized cell, and that works really well if you happen to be starting some vegetable seedlings that have a good sized root system from the get-go. But you can buy sheets of these that have big containers, little containers, everything in between. These have worked really well for me over the years. I clean them up every year and they have lasted very well. So I do recommend those, but that doesn't mean you have to go with that. Another thing you might see at a garden center is something that's called a peat pot, and I know a lot of people swear by them, but there's two things I don't like about them. One is they're made from compressed peat moss, among other things, and peat moss is really not a sustainable source, and so I'm not too crazy about that aspect. But the other thing is, in theory, you're supposed to be able to start the plant in here and then plant it, pot and all, in the garden. But a lot of times I find that this dries out really easily, actually in the garden soil. And what happens is it can be really difficult for the roots to get through it, to grow. And when you don't have a good root system on a plant, you're going to have problems. And what I have usually done when I used to use these was when I'm ready to transplant the seedling out into the garden, I peel away the pot and carefully plant just the seedling with the soil around it. And that works really well. I just wanted to mention this in case you see it. There are also things called peat pellets, and those are compressed peat that are wrapped in a plastic netting, and what you do is you hydrate them. They pop up to be kind of a starting pot size. You plant the seed in the top and let it grow. The problem with those is that even though you're supposed to be able to plant those all together in the soil, a lot of times that plastic netting on the outside will not allow the roots to grow through it very well. And also that netting, because it's plastic, it takes a very long time to degrade, if at all. So I don't really recommend those products. Now, around the house, what could you use? How about an egg carton? And you probably don't even need to make a drainage hole in the bottom. And the reason I say that is this is very fibrous, and so I think that the moisture, if there's excess moisture, it would drain out of it pretty easily. So that's an option. You just push your soil into here and plant the seeds in it. So that's something a lot of people have lying around the house. You might have empty to-go containers. You might have empty yogurt containers. Any of these things would work as containers for starting seeds. But again, remember to punch those drainage holes in them. And I just thought of one more thing. How about a half-gallon carton of milk? Once it's empty and you've cleaned it out, you could cut it in half lengthwise, and then you're going to have a nice container for starting seeds. Punch holes in the bottom for drainage. There are two other types of containers that I have purchased online, and I wanted you to know about them. The first is from Gardener's Supply, and it's called the Grow Ease Seed Starting Kit. So here's how it works. It has several components. This is a water reservoir, and it's very nice and sturdy, so it's going to last me a long time. And then there is a support system that goes with the pointy ends down and sets in there. And then you fill this reservoir with water. And then this is a capillary mat. It's kind of a felt-like fabric, and you place that on top with one end dipping down into the water. And it's going to wick the water up and onto this mat so that it can water the seedlings above it. Now on top of the capillary mat goes this planting grid. And so you're going to put your soil in, start your seeds in here. And because they're being watered from the bottom, the seedlings grow really, really well. Now back to the seed starting aspect of it. Once you have planted your seeds in here, you're going to cover this with a dome lid that comes with the system. And that increases the humidity to make the seeds germinate well. So once most of the seeds have sprouted, you're going to take the lid off. And when you're ready to transplant these seedlings, what you're going to do is lift off this grid of plants, remove the capillary mat, and then take the support system and turn it upside down so the points are facing up. And those points will correspond to holes that are in the bottom of each cell. And so you're going to put them over those points, and it is going to gently push the soil upward so that it's really easy to remove the blocks with the plants in them. I love that. All of this is very sturdy. It's going to last me a very long time. The other type of setup I wanted to show you is the All Roots seed starting system from Gardens Alive. Now I know I've been harping about how important it is for containers to drain well, but this system is more like a hydroponic system, so it's completely contradicting everything I just told you. So let me show you how it works. So this system is setting into a heavy-duty tray for now, just because this gets pretty heavy with all of the water. But this is a styrofoam grid, and into it goes these little soil plugs, and they have a hole in the top, and that's where the seed goes. And then you plunk it into this grid. This green part here is a water reservoir, so there is water down below. Now what I've got going in here is artichoke seedlings, and not all of them are up yet. But this system works really well, and I know it goes against everything I told you because drainage is important, but this is a different way to start seedlings, and it has worked really well for me. Okay, so here's a little artichoke seedling, and you can see this guy has big plants. That is a huge root already. And so this one is doing well, and it just illustrates how well this system has worked for me. Now, one thing I wanted to point out that is a little bit of a limitation of the system is the size of the hole in top of the soil plug. I once tried to start some larger seeded vegetables in here. I think they were melons and winter squash. And the problem is that this hole is a little tight, so it's very hard for the seeds to orient themselves in here. They can't turn around. And so I would only recommend using this for medium to small size seeds. There still are all kinds of things you can start in here, but I just wanted to point that out. So what kind of seed starting supplies do you need? Well, I would definitely pick up a bag of what's called either seed starting mix or germination mix. It is sterile, which is very important. It is light and fluffy, and it holds water well. You do not want to use garden soil because it can compact, it's difficult to keep evenly moist, and it can contain pathogens, and that is not good. You want to think of your seeds and your seedlings as little babies, and you want to keep them safe and healthy. So no garden soil. Another thing you might consider picking up at a garden center or online is a bag of finely milled sphagnum moss. Now I realize this bag is not a very good representation of it, but I bought this bag in 2000. I use it every year, and that illustrates how little you need to use. I'm going to show you in a moment how to use it, but what it does is it's a natural substance that inhibits the fungal disease called damping off. And that fungus can kill off seedlings in nothing flat. So this is a very inexpensive insurance policy to keep your seedlings healthy. You might also consider getting a seedling heat mat if you want. What this does is you put it underneath your seedling flat that you've planted, and it increases the temperature around the soil that your seeds are planted in by about 10 to 20 degrees above the temperature of the room where you have your seedling flat. And so for warm season crops like tomatoes, eggplants, and peppers, you can get much better and quicker germination. So you might consider that. They cost about $20 to $35. You can find them at garden centers and online. You are going to need either a clear plastic dome lid or a clear plastic bag. This is to go on your planted seedling flat before the seeds come up. And what it does is it increases the humidity, and that's what helps get better germination. I wanted to mention this because every time I have it in a video, everybody asks me, where did you get this? So obviously this is just an empty pop bottle. And this has a little screw-on mister that goes on the top, and this makes for a great gentle waterer for your seedlings. You can find them online. Just do a web search on bottle top waterers, and you'll find lots of sources for them. They're pretty inexpensive. You get 3 to 5 in a set, and I love these things. They work great, so you might want to pick some up. And then, of course, you're going to need some seeds, and that's the funnest part, right? Well, that was a lot of information, wasn't it? So now we're going to go through the steps for starting seeds. I wanted to clarify one last thing, and that is about fertilizing your seedlings, because I think it can be a little bit confusing and it's hard to know how much do I use and how often do I apply it. I like to use some type of a liquid nitrogen fertilizer, such as fish emulsion or fish fertilizer, or some type of a plant starting fertilizer. Both of them are going to be high in nitrogen, and that promotes leafy green growth, which is important when a seedling is little. But the thing is that fertilizers can burn foliage, and I don't want to make something that is too strong for the plants. So what I do is I make a half-strength fertilizer for them. So let's say the label on this says 1 tablespoon of fertilizer solution to a gallon of water. I'll still use the gallon of water, but I'll do a half of a tablespoon of the fertilizer and mix it in that gallon of water. So not full strength. And then I fertilize the seedlings starting when they have their first true leaves, which are the mature style of leaf, usually about every week to 10 days while they're getting going. And it really will help them develop good, strong growth. Well, I hope that gave you a good overview on starting plants from seed. It is economical, it is great fun, and it also is a way to grow unusual varieties that you can't find in nurseries and garden centers. Now, one last thing I wanted to mention is that if you go to my website, susansinthegarden.com, you will find seed starting guides that I have for all hardiness zones, and also a seed starting scheduler, as well as a vegetable planting guide. All of this is under the guides menu on my website, and I've made these resources for you so that they will be really useful. And of course, you can always drop me an email at susan@susansinthegarden.com, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Happy gardening.